Hello, everybody. I'm Chad Blair with Honolulu Civil Beat, and please welcome our guest tonight, Governor David Ige of Hawaii.
Aloha.
Governor, thank you for being on this forum tonight. Before I explain the details, I do want to invite Dr. John Hart with the Communications Department here at Hawaii Pacific University. We're actually at Aloha Tower. They are co-sponsoring this debate, or forum rather. John, please say what you need to say.
Aloha. Aloha. On behalf of Hawaii Pacific University and the Department of Communication, I welcome you to our lovely historic HPU Aloha Tower Marketplace campus. If you've never been here before, please visit. We'd love to have you look around. I'm very pleased to be a co-sponsor of tonight's and all the series of gubernatorial chats. Tonight we have, of course, our very special guest, Governor David Ige. Without further ado, Dr. Chad Blair.
Dr. Chad Blair, I did not know that. I'm impressed.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I know my mom's watching, and she just loved that plug right now. So, all right, let me read from the script. Honolulu Civil Beat is a nonprofit news organization. We're dedicated to cultivating an informed body of citizens, all striving to make Hawaii and Honolulu a better place to live. Civil Beat hosts monthly events. Know Your Candidates. It's a special 5-part series. This is part 4 on the gubernatorial race leading up to the primary, and it's hosted, as Dr. Hart said, with HPU. The event is being live streamed, and it will be archived on YouTube and Facebook. Governor, the format, as well as our audience, it's 40 minutes, one-on-one, you and I going back and forth. I do have questions that were prepared by myself and the Civil Beat editors. We also have questions that came in beforehand from our Civil Beat readers, and then we're going to save about 15 minutes for the end, and we will go exactly 1 hour, by the way. Around 6:45 or so, we're going to try and take Q&A from the audience. You'll see Civil Beat people with a Civil Beat t-shirt running around. I don't see them right now, but when they're back in, look for them. They have little white index cards, and you can write your questions on those cards. Without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. Remember, audience etiquette. I hope your cell phones are silenced. Governor, former governors George Ariyoshi and Ben Cayetano, they supported you 4 years ago, but now they're backing your opponent, Congresswoman Colleen Hanabusa. This is a quote from Ariyoshi, which is in a Hanabusa advertisement. Quote, "I have been disappointed. He has let too many important opportunities and prospects slip away." Governor, what happened to lose that kind of support? 2 former governors, your predecessors.
Well, you know, I think that being governor is unlike any other opportunity. I do believe that we have done a good job in this administration. You know, I'm proud of the work that we've done. You know, I do respect Governor Ariyoshi's and Cayetano's opinions and, you know, their decision to support my candidate. You know, I still believe that I'm the best candidate for governor. You know, there's not anything that can prepare you for being governor other than serving as governor. I assure you that other candidates might want to talk and promise about what they might do, but they really have no specific programs or ideas because they haven't been there. And I have been governor for the past 3.5 years or so, and I can tell you specifically the things that I have done and would propose to do. So my housing program is real. You know, we have state tools that we're using. We have projects lined up. You know, we've completed thousands of units. We have many more under development. And none of my opponents can really talk about any real kind of housing program. And I think that that's the fundamental difference.
Okay, but you know, I have to mention, just 4 years ago, I remember being at the Varsity building there at University, and Ariyoshi would actually show up and hang out.
Certainly.
This former governor, senior citizen, and was there anything, did either he or Governor Cayetano call you during your 4 years, 3.5 now, and say, Governor Ige, you got to stop doing this. You better do that. Here's my advice to you so that you can do a better job.
They did contact me, and they made suggestions and different decisions. Sometimes we agreed, sometimes we agreed to disagree. So, I really, based on the information that I had, I believe that I made the best decision that I could on behalf of the people of Hawaii. And both Governor Ariyoshi and Governor Cayetano sometimes disagreed, sometimes agreed.
Okay. Governor John Waihee, the former governor, is supporting your campaign. Here's someone who I don't know what his official position is, but he yesterday sent an email to the media, including Civil Beat. It's former Governor Neil Abercrombie. And he said that your claim in a TV ad that where you say you protected 40,000 acres of watershed forest from developers, he says, and this is Abercrombie speaking, quote, Ige's claim is false in every respect. It is a deliberate attempt to deceive the public. It is a dishonest statement meant to mislead the voters with a cynical appropriation of all the work of the Abercrombie administration. His point being that the watershed program began under his administration. William Ila was DLNR, now at Hawaiian Homelands. Is Abercrombie correct that you deceived the public on the watershed protection?
Yeah, I haven't. Chad, in many instances, government doesn't just start and end with each administration. It's a continuous evolution. Yes, I never claimed that I initiated or started the watershed program. I'm certain that there was a watershed program even before Governor Abercrombie, and I acknowledge that he supported the program and really pushed it forward. And I'm expanding and implementing a lot of the things that he talked about. I do believe that we protected more acres during my 3.5 years than I don't really know. We can check the records. But I do know since I become governor that we protected 40,000 acres.
This goes to a core criticism of your campaign from your opponent, that you're taking credit for what others have done, not giving them credit, and we're talking primarily the legislature, but also previous administrations.
But I would just say, Chad, and you should pull the press conference we had when I had the bill signing on housing. First thing out of my mouth was, I'd like to thank the legislature for making this investment in the housing program. Every step of the way, it's funny, I get criticized for not taking enough credit for the things that I've done, and now people are criticizing me that I take too much credit. I don't believe I've ever said that Governor Abercrombie did not start or be a strong proponent of the watershed. I've never said that the legislature were not involved in any of these projects. I've said we've done a lot together. Every single time that I've spoken about the things that we've done, I've said that, I'm proud to be governor of the state of Hawaii because together we've done a lot.
Another criticism, and it's important because if you're elected to another 4 years, you will probably be serving with a number of these people, or rather you will be on the 5th floor, they'll be below in the Capitol. This is from Scott Saiki, the majority leader, but also others, saying you should have been more involved in the special session legislation for the rail tax bill back in 2017. Their concern is that you were virtually absent. Yes, I know that you signed the bill, but why didn't you get more involved in this very important legislation?
I've been criticized on both ways, and I've told you this before. I'm not into drama. Clearly, the House staked out a position that they would never ever consider an extension of the general excise tax, and I acknowledge that. I didn't go around saying, well, we still ought to do it, because I was clear that they were being honest about that, and we did talk about options. Never in any of those conversations did they ever bring up the transit accommodations tax. We were very involved working through a number of different scenarios, looking at providing them information on different revenue streams, but at the end of the day, it's really a legislative solution that had to come forward, and
yet it's taxpayer dollars that are going
Absolutely.
to this. Did the TAT catch you by surprise?
Absolutely. I didn't hear it come up in any of the public hearings. It pops out in conference committee on the last day, a 2.75, an increase in the transit accommodations tax of 2.75%, making it the highest TAT in the country. that pops out in the last day and gets agreed to, obviously I think it took a lot of people by surprise.
Now, that was the end of the regular session.
Yes.
It collapsed. The Senate and House.
It fell apart because
did.
obviously there wasn't support in the House or the Senate.
So the leadership took a couple months, took the summer, came back.
And we worked with them at that point in
What
time.
did you do to work with them?
Well, we had, West Machida was very active in providing them projections on different tax, different ways of looking at the transit accommodations tax. We provided them a number of projections on what that would look like. We provided them support in the cost side of the equation, looking at different scenarios on the cost side. So we were supporting the activity that they had requested.
Okay, enough of the past on rail,
Sure.
at least for me. It may come from someone else, but let's look forward. As you know, part of that legislation gave the state greater oversight. Certainly the state auditor has a very direct influence over, be looking carefully at those books. What's your role going forward now that this bill is in place, the revenue's coming in, and if you get another 4 years, who knows what the cost projections are going to look like? What's your role as governor over the Oahu Rail Project?
Well, clearly, my director of accounting and general services is really tasked with reviewing all of the invoices that the county has and making sure that the invoices that the county is requesting for reimbursement is consistent with the law. We've now gone through 2 quarters, so 6 months, and we've evaluated and reimbursed the county for the TAT or GET that met the requirements.
So do you still want to see it go all the way eventually, if there's money, to UH Manoa, to Waikiki, who knows where else?
Well, I think we are focused on getting this first project done, which is really to Ala Moana.
Okay.
I think it's very important to that. It came up in the debates whether
Right.
I would support an extension and how would we pay for it. And I said, yes, that's a good conversation to have. I think that everyone recognizes when the university is in session, traffic is terrible.
Sure.
And when the university is out of session, traffic is great. So clearly, the transit system getting to the university or Waikiki eventually would be a great thing for increasing ridership and the economic viability of the transit system. As you know, the question is, what would the cost be? And how would we pay for it?
Well,
and
speaking of how we pay for it, if I understand correctly, and correct me if I have your position wrong, you said you're open. The question was asked about an indefinite extension of the tax to pay, and Hanabusa, Representative Hanabusa, more or less is on record as saying no blank check.
Right. Well, what I said is that conversation about the future of the transit system needs to be a conversation that we have, to ask the hypothetical when we are 8 or 10 years away from opening the system, whatever that timeline is, I think is premature. And, part of that is what will the actual cost of completing the first phase, and the question is about what is the ongoing operating and maintenance cost of that system,
Okay.
and how would we pay for it?
Thank you. This is more criticism that came up about your leadership.
I know lots of people are criticizing, but I'm okay with that.
That's all right. This is criticism about criticism.
Sure.
Your view that was posted in a television commercial that you said on the campaign trail that criticism isn't leadership has upset some women who essentially argue that you're demeaning women with that remark. Representative Della Al-Baladi specifically equated it with telling them, and this is in her words, to sit down and shut up. That message went out on Hanabusa campaign letterhead last week. What's your reaction to that you are demeaning to women?
I have 2 daughters, Amy and Lauren, and First Lady Dawn certainly would not allow me to be demeaning to women. I think the ad speaks for itself. I don't know if you've seen it and whether you thought that it was demeaning to women.
You're not reading Civil Beat?
I'm
You've been
sorry.
busy. It's all right.
Yes, I've been busy. So I think what we were trying to say, and obviously 30-second ad is not the best vehicle for communication. So you're trying to get a message and a thought into a 30-second essential sound bite. And what we were trying to say is, look, just criticizing is easy. Leadership is about engaging the public. I didn't have time to say that in the 30 seconds. Engaging the public, working with stakeholders, finding and implementing solutions. Leadership is about making and making improvements that improve the quality of life of our community. You know, and like I said, I'm proud of my record of doing that. I would challenge you to ask my opponents about the things that they've been able to do.
You know, if you get back for another 4 years, you're going to have to probably deal with these very same people that have been so critical and supportive of your opponent. That's going to be challenging.
Yes, but that occurred this session, and we had a great session. You know, a lot of our program was embraced. You know, I'm confident that when you put the public interest first, when you build your budget based on the priorities of the people, you know, the legislature follows. They made a lot of noise about homelessness. You know, the House zeroed out our homeless program. They went to zero. And we had a reduction in the homeless count statewide 2 consecutive years. It hasn't happened in a long time. And at the end of session, they restored our funding for the programs that work.
Congresswoman Hanabusa suggested those point-in-time counts were dubious.
Well, you know, and Dr. Blair, you know that statistics.
Governor, you're sucking up to me now.
No. You know, I mean, you know, what I would say, Chad, is that the point-in-time count is a consistent way that we have counted homelessness every year going back for a long time. So, yes, we might not be able to capture every single homeless individual in the count, but it is implemented in a consistent way. So I wouldn't take that if the count this year was 7,672, that's the exact number of homeless people we have. But I do think that if it's down 10% from last year, then we do have less homeless people this year than last year.
And do you feel you deserve credit for that?
I do. Look, I've always said that this is a community-wide effort, that it is county, state, federal government, and partners looking to leverage the assets that we bring together. It's about the private sector and engaging them. It's about the providers, the service providers. And, you know, we've retooled all of the contracts that we have with the service providers, really looking at making the system work. You know, and so I don't take credit by myself. You know, it's about Dwayne Kurisu and Kaho'iki Village. You know, and when he came to me with this idea that he wanted to create a better community for homeless families because it hurt him to see homeless families on the street, you know, we worked together, and the county and the state, you know, leveraging private sector investments. And, you know, that project, I think, is a great example that when we all work together, we can do great things.
All right, thank you, thank you. I do have 1 or 2 more critical questions. We're at about the third way of this. I do want to talk about something else, and then we are going to get to readers' questions as well as questions of the audience.
So are you going to ask non-critical questions, or is every question that you ask my opponents critical? I'm just curious.
Are you saying you didn't watch my interview with Colin?
I'm sorry. I have to admit that I did not watch your interview.
All right,
so.
all right.
So did he praise her or what? Was every question critical, or I just thought I'd ask?
My boss, Patty Epler, tells me I did very well.
Okay. That's the main thing.
All right, I'm going to just step away from the criticism for just a moment.
Okay.
One of our staff here who helps organize this event, Mariko Ching, showed me a photo from 4 years ago, right about now. Nobody thought you were going to defeat Neil Abercrombie in the primary, although by now I think the poll numbers are starting to reflect a change. And you and I are sitting here like this in Kaka'ako somewhere.
Yes.
Your hair is a lot darker. I'm thinner.
Okay.
No. In all seriousness, what's it been like? Can you tell us what it's like to be in that seat? You mentioned earlier that you just cannot anticipate.
I think it's the best job in the world. It's an opportunity to make a difference in our community each and every day. You know, the range of responsibilities is huge. it is from being responsible for the health and safety of our community 24 hours a day, 365 days out of the year, in emergency response and responding to natural and man-made disasters. It is about public education and about what is it that we can do to assure that all of our children have the opportunities that they need to gain the skills.
So what's that like? What's that like
Well,
to
I mean,
go
I-
every day?
Well, I mean, I think it's, it's a relentless job. It's, 12 and 16-hour days, 7 days a week. It's there's always something to do and more to be done. It's about being an international ambassador and working on the relationships with Japan. Thinking about how to strengthen the relationship when you're meeting with Prime Minister Abe. It's about going back to National Governors Association and working with the
Okay.
president. I mean, it's the whole range of things.
Is it ever fun?
I enjoy it. I mean, being able to make a difference and improve the quality of life is fun to me. Sometimes people think that I'm kind of wonky, but I think it's an important opportunity.
Speaking of man-made disasters,
Sure.
a super PAC is running ads criticizing your response to the false missile alert, mentioning in particular the Twitter password. It's, I think, all over TV and radio and elsewhere. What is your reaction to this ad? It's called 38 Minutes.
I think that as your poll recognized, I think the momentum in the campaign is great. I think that all of the volunteers and many who have been with the campaign when many press people wrote us off 12 or 14 months, said the governor's lost, he's 20 points behind, he has no chance of winning re-election, to where we are today is really kind of a demonstration of our commitment to grassroots campaigning. It's about reaching out and talking to many people, being focused on the message.
You're not going to comment on the ad?
No, I mean, I think it's a sign of desperation by the special interests that are supporting my
They changed now.
opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for the public because they're going to be inundated by mail, piece after piece that's going to show up and extract extraneous facts. And, I don't remember every single vote that I've had in my 30 years, 29 years in the state legislature, but I'm certain there are 1 or 2 or 3 that may look suspicious when you pull it out of context.
Are you going to counteract? Are you going to fight back?
Well, we don't. We don't have the money to fight back. The reality is, you know what, Chad? I trust the voters of Hawaii to really be smart enough.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To be smart enough to recognize what is factual and truthful, and I think most importantly, what is important in determining who they choose to vote for governor of the state of Hawaii.
Okay. A couple more questions from the Civil Beat staff, and then we'll go on to readers' questions. Hawaii is a major tourism destination. We all know that, central to our economy. Are you satisfied with how the Daniel K. Inouye International Airport looks?
Yes, for the part that we finished, I was going to say, look, our visitors' first and last impression is of the airport, and it's not a very pretty.
Have you been on the Wiki lately?
No, but just wait till we get to the new Wiki because we have great ideas.
But why is this taking so long? This came up under the Lingle administration, the idea
Absolutely.
to modernize the harbors, the highways,
Yes.
and the airport. And I tell you, there's spots of that airport that I think Steve McGarrett is there, not
Yes.
the new one, but the old one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's the
And you know what,
exact same-
Chad?
yeah, so
You know
why
what,
is it-
Chad?
yeah.
Nothing was done through the Lingo administration, and nothing was done
But
through
you've
the
had 3.5
Abercrombie
years.
Yes, and look, we've authorized $2.7 billion of project. We're moving on the Mauka terminal, which is $268 million. We've talked about making that improvement for 30 years, 3 decades. We've talked about it. We had groundbreaking couple weeks ago. We've been talking about expansion of the Diamond Head terminal and redoing and expanding arrivals, immigration and arrivals for decades. we finally got approval by the airlines committee to really move forward $1 billion investment in that facility. We have a new public-private partnership in the Central Concourse. Please visit Sammy's Bars and Grill because it's gourmet food.
Sammy Hager?
Sammy Hager. See, even you didn't know. When was the last time you went to the airport? You ought to go there and have dinner. But it's a public-private partnership. $60 million of private sector investment, improving the facilities, bringing in new retail opportunities, and gourmet restaurant food for the people who are stuck in the airport.
I'm not sure I recall Sammy Hager gourmet. I have eaten at the Maui restaurant where he has a spot.
Sammy's Bar and Grill. But don't you think it's better?
Well,
don't you think it's well?
Airport food is another thing, but I'm more interested in. As you said, you've traveled internationally, and I just recently actually got back from I have been spending a lot of time in airports.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you our airport
so that's why
looks a heck of a lot different than Singapore's.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you're willing tonight to say 4 years from now that we will have a modern
absolutely
airport.
If I'm reelected, and I know I will be reelected on August 11th, we will have an airport that you will be proud of.
All right, one follow-up.
Absolutely.
One follow-up. Colleen Hanabusa says you're lapsing and spending those DOT funds. That's primarily on the highways.
Yeah, and she is misinformed. Last year, because of our performance of moving projects through, we've reduced the pipeline from $800 million or so to $450 million. The Federal Department of Transportation recognized our enhanced performance and gave us a $41 million bonus of additional funds that they took from other states who were not performing and gave it to us. And we're getting very close to announcing this year's results, which we've even approved over last year. So we are in line for another performance bonus because we've done a terrific job. And we haven't been lapsing funds.
Why does she say that? She's
well, it's hard when you're changing jobs all the time. Maybe you don't know what is really going on.
She's also a member of Congress, and she understands appropriations.
Sure. So you might want to ask her about that, because I can give you the letters from the U.S. Department of Transportation.
She said the same thing about Hawaiian homelands, and that's actually come from Brian Schatz too.
Sure. No, we've been working on when I came into office, previous administration did not move NAHASDA funds projects in a timely manner. We've increased spending of NAHASDA funds to the highest levels ever.
If you wouldn't mind explaining.
Native Hawaiian, it's a housing program to support affordable housing. Federal program. And we've increased the spending to levels that have never been attained in previous years. Okay. Obviously, we had catch up to do.
All right. One more question for me for now.
Okay. Now, is it critical or is it positive? Oh, go ahead.
It's critical.
Okay.
This is from the Hanabusa website, her campaign website.
Sure.
Quote, the Ige administration says there has been a 2% completion of its $37 million state payroll modernization. Call it a major milestone. At this pace, according to the website, it will be I'm going to have to read this correctly, the year 2116. Basically 100 years from now.
Yes.
By the time all state employees are transitioned to the new payroll system, wait, there's more.
Okay.
This is a sad attempt to create a campaign talking point. It's insulting to the tax-paying public. By the way, delays and missteps also apply to the attempt to modernize the tax department. Your response?
My response is obviously somebody who doesn't understand technology projects. So here's the facts. Yes, the first phase was limited because we wanted to make sure that the program worked. So yes, phase one was 2% of 2,000 approximately employees that was in the first phase. We have 2 more phases to go. Actually, second phase is this Friday, which is 20,000 employees, which means that we're going to get done way ahead of whatever calculation they had.
2116.
Yes, 2116. Yeah. And in fact, second phase, 20,000 employees means that we will have completed approximately 40% of the employees. The last two, everybody in state government except for Department of Education and the University of Hawaii. And they will be done, I forget the date, either October of this year. So we will finish the payroll project, and anybody who's ever been involved with technology, sorry there's nobody in the Hanabusa campaign that really has been, but the project will be finished before the end of the year.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We
So,
are at the
you know, you might want to write that in your article. And you might want to ask her what technology project she's been involved with that she's successfully implemented.
I'm very fortunate that Nathan Eagle is actually writing the story for tomorrow.
Okay.
Readers' questions.
Sure.
And we actually got quite a few. What value do you see in the role of the lieutenant governor? And how do you plan to work with the new LG? As you know, Congresswoman Hanabusa has been critical. Shan Tsutsui has endorsed her campaign.
Sure.
What is the role?
You know, the role of the lieutenant governor is to serve when I'm not available, and that's the legal definition. They also have a couple things. You know, they organize information for boards and commissions. You know, they manage department rules and regulations. Name changes and things like that. I've treated the lieutenant governor like a member of the cabinet, and I've invited him to every cabinet meeting. And really, that's where we as a cabinet, you know, when I look to build a cabinet, I look for leaders to lead the departments. I believe in empowering them, creating goals and objectives and vision, and then asking them to implement that in the best way for the areas of responsibility. So our cabinet meetings, we talk about the challenges, we talk about the problems. As you know, many issues require multiple agencies to be involved, and the cabinet is where we talk about these challenges.
Okay.
We make sure that everybody is on the same page
Understood.
in terms of
But
priorities.
the perception, Governor,
Yes.
is that, and I don't want to dwell on Shan Tsutsui. I recognize he was under a prior administration and then
Sure.
carried over when you defeated Abercrombie, but it seems like an awful waste of a job that pays well over $100,000 a year.
Certainly, I'm committed to looking at the talents and skills that whoever becomes lieutenant governor has and engage them in being a productive member of my administration and the cabinet.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely.
More. Oh, here's a softball for you.
Okay. Wow. That must have came from the public. Okay.
It did indeed. Do you see, and this is one of your favorite topics, but it's specific to a particular area. Do you see an importance for arts in the schools for elementary schools in particular? In particular, they mention like music education. I know you've talked a lot about education, but this is specific to the arts, maybe music education.
Absolutely. And let me just say, when I was going to Pearl City Elementary School as an elementary school student, every single student in public school learned to play the ukulele. It was part of the 4th grade curriculum, and I learned to play the ukulele like every single public school student. I'm not certain where we got away from that, because today music in elementary school is a flutophone, and I don't know how many of you can see the value of learning to play the flutophone, but so I do believe.
What is a flutophone?
You wouldn't want to know, because having experienced 3 children trying to learn to play the flutophone, hot cross buns, right? You parents out in the audience, hot cross buns. So it's not very useful versus ukulele is very useful. So I do believe that we need to get more art back into the schools and the curriculum. You know, that's one of the reasons, you know, if you look at our new blueprint for education, it really gets away from the one-size-fits-all that drove the previous administration, where every school was trying to do the same thing. The focus was on performance on standardized tests, to really get back and give the schools back to the communities and let them design and implement the programs that make sense. You know, I was proud to be able to appropriate money for the STEAM building at Waimea Middle School. Science, technology, engineering, arts,
STEM.
And AINA, STEAM.
STEAM, not STEM.
And mathematics
So INA goes between the engineering and the math.
Yes, so it goes
STEAM.
science, technology, engineering,
INA.
arts, and INA.
Okay.
So, but they only had one A. and
That's STEAM?
STEAM.
Not STEM?
No, they only had one A. to make it more
All right,
readable.
all right.
But I think most importantly, that facility was focused on technology and incorporating the greatest and latest and greatest learning technologies. But most importantly, it became an asset for the entire West Side public schools. They're doing training there, curriculum, sharing best practices. You know, I think it has revolutionized and re-injected arts and love for the land into the curriculum.
I will ask for members to start thinking about writing, members in the audience to start thinking about questions. There's Mariko with the white cards, and when she has a moment, if she could bring me a couple of them already. I know a lot of you are Governor Ige supporters. We're not looking for more softballs. We're hoping for serious questions about the future of the state of Hawaii, so please
Absolutely.
keep that in mind. I will be the ultimate censor of these cards. We have 2 more questions from the audience, and then we'll start turning to those. Oh, this is okay. This is interesting. What is your position on the CONCON referendum, and why do you hold that position? And I believe you've actually already gone on record saying if the voters do in fact choose to have a constitutional convention, you'll support it. But if I remember correctly, you have also warned of unintended consequences, and I think you've pointed to California as an example where, in particular, referendum, initiative, and recall, which could come from a CONCON,
Right.
could get out of control. Tell us more about that, because that is on the ballot this fall.
Right. Well, I do think that the people should really think about that. You know, I'm not as, you know, I really believe in the voters of Hawaii, that they'll do the right thing. You know, I'm not so afraid that we shouldn't have a CONCON because it'll, you know, wipe out Hawaiian programs, or, you know, it'll create these other issues. You know, the state legislature has been taking on constitutional amendments, you know, pretty regularly. It hasn't been a real roadblock for change. That said, you know, it has been 30 years, is it 40 years? 40 years since there's been a CONCON. So I wouldn't,
1978.
right. So, you know, I'm not afraid of what that would mean. You know, the challenge would be, would there be people interested in running? And, you know, there is a lot of cost and logistics involved with a CONCON. So, you know, I think it's a great opportunity for the people of Hawaii to decide whether they want to see a relook at the entire Constitution, or, you know, that they're satisfied that the changes have occurred. I do have a concern about unlimited referendum, because I've seen, and I visited my brother in California during election. I don't know how many of you have actually seen what one of those ballots look like in those referendum states. You know, it is. You know, people complain about constitutional amendments in Hawaii, and there's 2 or 3 or 4. The book in California is like 40, 50, 60 pages of proposal after proposal after proposal. You know, it's become a cottage industry. There are businesses businesses that you could pay to get anything on the ballot.
Well, let me ask you this. We do have initiative in some of the counties, and we've seen some very important things, particularly regarding GMOs and pesticides.
Absolutely.
And it has really invigorated voters. That vote on Maui was so close, and mind you, it's gone to the courts and it's been challenged. But isn't this an example of people? Isn't this an example of people, voters, getting directly involved in the democracy and trying to take their own government in their own hands and not relying on the legislature to do this stuff?
You know, like I said, I do agree that there can be a case made for initiative, but even in Hawaii, we have only very limited initiative. You know, they can't do taxes. You know,
Right.
they can't do a number of things. So, I mean, if you're talking about a focused and smart kind of initiative process, then I could support that. But I've also seen, and we've actually seen in California, I know that one year there were 2 initiatives that were both adopted that actually did opposite things. You know, so when you're looking at and you're filling out a ballot and it's 100 pages long and you're going through all of these proposals, it can get onerous. So, you know, so as long as we're thinking about what that means and how we would be able to do it, I'm open to that.
The last question from our previous reader questions, and then we turn to audience Q&A. What industries besides tourism and the military should Hawaii prioritize and invest in? And let's be clear, there really is only tourism and the military. There's other, I mean, we talk about diversified ag, we talk about any number of things, but really the bulk of the revenue overwhelmingly is coming from this. We're not Silicon Hawaii, if you will.
Well, a couple of things that I say. You know, I support the Sustainable Hawaii Initiative, and there's an economic piece of that. As you know, we send billions of dollars to import fossil fuel every single year, $5 billion, $4 billion a year, depending on the cost of a barrel of oil. And in terms of food production, because we import about 85% of the food that we eat, we send out of state between $1 billion and $2 billion to import food. So if we were totally self-supporting, totally sustainable Hawaii, imagine 4 years ago from now when I finish my second term as governor, and we are totally sustainable. You know, that would be a $7 billion industry. So being able to do that, and instead of sending money out of state and invest it to create jobs in Hawaii, is one of those things.
Okay.
I've supported an innovation economy and creating the infrastructure to do that. You know, Chad, I think it's technology is so pervasive today that virtually any business will benefit from an infusion of technology. I think most importantly, the opportunity for all of us in this community is virtually any company, any job can be done in Hawaii now. You know, it's not the same kind of situation. You know, technology has gotten so good that we can even consider manufacturing in the islands, because the cost of the hardware and the systems to create products have come down significantly. So we're not talking about $5 or $10 million investment to create a manufacturing business. You know, you're talking about 100,000, 200,000 kind of, you can get started. So every opportunity is available to us.
Okay.
So it's about creating an environment that supports innovation, new startups.
I would love if by 2045 we are in fact importing a lot less fuel and food. We shall see if that's the case. If you do not want, this is from the audience, if you do not want to utilize LNG, liquefied natural gas, how do you propose to transition away from non-renewables? My understanding is your opponent's saying that's a bridge fuel that can help us get there, but you are flat out opposed to LNG, if I understand.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Why would we want to make that investment? And let's be clear, for us to transition on a temporary basis to LNG, we would have to make significant investments in our utilities to allow the importation and distribution and use of LNG. And do we want to spend that capital and allow them to make that investment in our infrastructure, or do we want to direct them to make investments in clean renewable energy, which is the end game that we all seek? You know, Kauai County, KIUC, is going to be at, I believe, 50%.
The co-op,
renewable.
the electric company on Kauai.
Yeah, they'll be at 50% renewable by 2020.
Is that the model? I mean, how long is this transition?
All I'm saying is that technology has allowed us so that we can invest in solar panels and batteries and get dispatchable energy, firm energy, for less than the cost of oil today. You know, and that technology is driving it even lower. I do think it's really about looking at storage, because we know that storage is the challenge. Kauai is looking at hydroelectric and pumped hydro as a storage mechanism. I really think that we need to look at that here in the islands. We've talked a lot about Lake Wilson potentially being a pump storage hydroelectric kind of facility that would allow us to generate firm power during the evenings, right? We know that we can generate renewable, clean renewable, more than we need. The challenge to get to 2045 is being able to store and use and get access to energy in the evening times when the sun's not out.
Well, we're at about the 45-minute mark. We have about 15 minutes left. This is from the audience. How has your background as an engineer influenced your approach to the role of governor?
You know, I do take systems approach when I look at issues and challenges. And so I'll talk about homeless very briefly. But, you know, it really was about what how do we create a system that really drives us to reduce homelessness? And I'm not like the legislature just throwing $30 million saying, I don't know what to do with it, but please figure it out.
The Ohana zones, is that what you're referring
Safe
to?
zones, yes,
Safe
Ohana zones,
okay.
whatever you want to call it, because I do believe about investing in programs that work. I don't believe that I want to waste taxpayer dollars. I want to be focused on things that will make a difference. And so we did create and work with leadership at the county, state, and federal levels to talk about programs. We embrace the Housing First model, which really is focusing on permanent supportive housing. We are enforcing and keeping public spaces public so that they don't overrun parks. And it's really about housing, and creating affordable housing, housing at all price points, because ultimately, our homelessness problem or challenge is exacerbated by the fact that we haven't been building housing.
Lots of questions coming in. How have you stood up to Donald Trump? And I don't know if that means as much talking about what Doug Chin did when he was your AG. I suppose that's part of it, but
I know we want to get to, Doug, I'm one of the last governors that have an appointed attorney general. So we talked about it. So you might say that he doesn't act. He definitely is the people's attorney, and I'm not suggesting that he doesn't have dual responsibilities. But we did discuss which rulings and which Trump policies we would explicitly challenge. So that's it. I, as governor of the state of Hawaii, joined the U.S. Climate Alliance. As you know, President Trump said, forget the Paris Agreement, climate change is not real, global warming is not happening. And I joined the other governors, Democrats and Republicans, because we know that the United States has to have a leadership position in order for us to tackle climate change. And the governor and the Congress abdicated. They have no policy. The president has said, I'm not going to pay attention. And so governors stepped up. And, Governor Cuomo, Governor Brown, Kate Brown of Oregon, Inslee.
Democrats all.
No, there is a Republican, I'll tell you. There is. But and I'm working on Governor Walker in Alaska, because I think we share.
Independent, I think.
He is an independent,
Okay.
but we're working on him because we know that it matters. And so clearly we've taken on the mantle of leadership in this country because it's been abdicated.
A follow-up
Okay.
to this, and I know you've met the president, and has there been any, this is coming from me, by the way, have you felt any retaliation from this administration? I know we've heard Jeff Sessions complaining about our judges and an island in the Pacific, but have you, as the leader of the administration here, noticed cuts to federal funding, other impacts?
There have been proposed rules I know that we've challenged, but let me just say this, and I have been pleased, especially when it came to disaster response. This is the first time that I made a request for federal disaster declaration, and the president actually responded in less than 24 hours with the eruption on Hawaii Island. I do think it's because I work that relationship. I do call the White House. I might disagree with policy, but I am the governor of all of you, and we definitely need to work with them for certain programs, and disaster preparedness, disaster response is one of those. So when the eruption happened, I contacted the White House and I said, this is a situation that may require federal engagement within a day of the eruption happening, because I know that it is important, and we've been working with FEMA and extending that because it's important. So I do think that in certain areas there's lots of politics and partisan fighting. I'm glad that in terms of disaster response and disaster support, that they are not playing political games.
Okay, all right. Two questions coming in on, well, they're about Super PAC advertising, which we mentioned earlier. Is there any way that Hawaii can eliminate and protect people from negative information that demeans the meaning of aloha? And I'm not sure if that means the aloha pokey story, but they're essentially saying, what can we do to get rid of Super PAC advertising?
You know, Chad, right? I mean, I think the best antidote is the public being smart about and not listening to all of that the last minute smear and attack ads that you're all going to get in the mail. I do predict that that's going to happen. Unfortunately, as you know, the super PACs were created because of Citizens United at the U.S. Supreme Court level. So there would really have to be a constitutional change or something in order to
federal level.
At the federal level.
Okay,
that
right.
would not be available to us.
More questions coming in from the audience. Many residents want to install rooftop solar, but Hawaiian Electric stopped net metering. Will there be improvements to bring back rooftop solar for homes?
There definitely will be, and the PUC is having hearings to ensure that HECO is really looking at how to manage the penetration of solar on the network. KIUC has a very high penetration of rooftop solar, and they seem to be able to manage a stable and reliable network. So we definitely, and the PUC will challenge the utility to do better. One of the things that HECO is doing that Kauai has already done is they've already installed smart meters for all of their customers. And that is a critical component that allows you to manage and balance the load. Sorry, my electrical engineering hat. So I think that that's part of it. You know, we have, here on Oahu, we haven't made, or any of the other islands other than Kauai, we haven't made the investments necessary for smart grid technology that allows you to accommodate more solar and more variable generators on the network.
Okay.
So,
speaking of Hawaiian Electric, what do you make of the donations Colleen Hanabusa has received from NextEra executives? It's in the thousands of dollars. Nathan Eagle has reported that. I did ask her about that the other day.
Well, what did she say?
She said, well, you know.
Just more special interest money.
She didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
She didn't reject the money. You, of course, famously vocally opposed the NextEra purchase for Hawaiian Electric. But let me continue with the question.
Okay.
What do you make of those donations? Perhaps you already answered that. And how do you plan to help fulfill boy, that is illegible. Something commitment. Oh, it's back to the commitment of the 100% renewable energy. And we're still talking about having a utility here that on all the other islands besides Kauai, our electricity rates are still really high. We don't know when we're going to be able to transition. I guess two questions. What do you think about Hanabusa, Congresswoman, receiving NextEra money? And two, more on this 2045 goal for renewables.
I mean, I think that that's a subject for the voter to decide. You know, what do you think about NextEra making tens of thousands of dollars of campaign contributions to my opponent? You know, they must be doing it for a reason. You know, I think that
what reason would that be?
I think it's what all special interests make contributions for.
Do you not receive contributions from special interests?
I do seek contributions from as broad a cross section of our community as I can. You know, and they know there's no quid pro quo. You know, and my contributions are part of public record, and you know, I think that we've been very successful in being very clear that that we're not about that. That we're not going to exchange favors for contributions. We're not going to do the backroom deals. You know, it's about focused on ensuring that the decisions that we make benefit the public.
We just have time, Governor, for just a few more questions, and there's so many to choose from. But
so, are you going to choose the positive ones or the critical ones? But go ahead.
Oh, there's a missile defense one. Put that one over here. All right.
Okay.
Softball. I think this is from Cindy. Please describe two of your most important accomplishments in the past 4 years, and describe what you did to achieve those. And we just have time for one or two more after this.
You know, I'm really proud of the accomplishments in the area of homelessness and housing. You know, homelessness was climbing every year for many, many years. It's a problem that affects us all in the community. And for the first time, we actually had significant reductions in consecutive years because we've totally changed the system to focus on the right things. Every service provider, every nonprofit providing homeless services knows that we're going to measure their ability to take somebody from homeless and put them in permanent supportive housing. We've almost doubled the capacity of our homeless providers. They used to be able to place about 200, 220 homeless individuals into permanent housing on average every month. And today, those same contractors, and there are a few more because we've expanded statewide, are now able to place more than 419 on average homeless individuals into permanent housing. The reason we are seeing that reduction is because the system is working better.
Okay.
So that's part of it.
All right.
We are enforcing homeless and encouraging every time we enforce, we have a place for them in a shelter, in a transition, in permanent housing.
right.
And we're trying to, and we are constructing housing. Thousands of new homes, thousands of affordable homes, and you know what? The newspaper is going to wiggle about, but I gave them the complete list of projects that we have, more than 12,000 units that we are tracking and publicly engaged, and you can decide which ones were before me, which ones are after me.
Certainly your opponent has, and so has the Star Advertiser. One real quick follow-up.
Well, you would think they were working together, maybe. I don't know.
One follow-up, and
Sure.
It's back to this, one of your accomplishments that you feel that you're strong on. And we're going to have to end with this question because I
Okay.
got to read some closing remarks. Homelessness. Colleen Hanabusa, sitting in this chair just a week ago tonight, said this when she was talking about the dubiousness of the point-in-time count, and that maybe you don't deserve credit for bringing down those numbers, although it dropped by 9.4, 9.6%.
More than 18% over 2 years.
Over 2 years,
Yes.
okay. But then she said this, she says, but just look around. Just look at the streets, look at the parks, anecdotally. And I'll have to admit, as I drove down Ward, and I actually rode through Kaka'ako and downtown, just kind of took a scenic route to see what was going on, they're still there. It does seem that, at least anecdotally, the problem's not getting better. That must concern you as the governor of this state, that these people, and I know they need help, and they're human beings, that so many of them are on our streets.
Yes, it is not against the law for people to be homeless. You know, every time we do an enforcement, we have a place for them and we encourage them. We have social workers that go in before we do the sweep and we move them out. We go in and we say, look, here are the programs that we have. We have spaces for you. We want you to take our help and move into a shelter. About a third of them will do it. About a third of them are hardcore and they move to the next site. And about a third of them, we have a chance at convincing them. And we hope to get that number better. But it's not against the law to be homeless. And, you know, we will continue to look for opportunities like Kahau'ike Village, public-private partnership, where we're building permanent homes and providing supportive services so that they can get out of homelessness and move into permanent housing.
All right, Governor, I'm going to give you the final word. You got a minute to tell us why we should send you back for 4 years.
Yeah,
More.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm an engineer. Leadership is more than criticizing. Leadership is about engaging the community, talking to stakeholders, finding alternatives, and getting it done. And I'm proud of our record. You know, we have a new blueprint for education. I didn't even talk about the 1,300 classrooms that I closed after I made that promise. You know, we have early college, and we'll be expanding to every single public high school. Every student will have the opportunity to take college credits and earn, and we've had students complete Associate of Arts degree before they graduated high school, you know, all across the state. You know, we are making significant progress in housing. I'm the only one with a real plan. Everybody talks about smoke and mirrors. I can give you the list of 1,200 units
Okay,
we're actually.
minute's up.
But, okay. But anyway, Dr. Blair, go ahead. So that's why I deserve to be governor for Pomona.
Thank you, Governor Ige, for joining us tonight, and a big mahalo to Hawaii Pacific University. By the way, Gordon Biersch has reopened. A reminder about an upcoming event. Our last interview of the gubernatorial candidates is tomorrow night, right here, with Andrea Topola, the House Minority Leader. She'll be joining us at 6 o'clock. For more information, you can pick up a handout and visit us online at civilbeat.org for full election coverage. And most important of all, please remember to vote. before and on August the 11th. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Governor.